Okay, and I just want to go to the next question here because I think it's a big one. It's a short one, but it's a big one, you know? So it's how can understanding Ikigai as a concept be used to craft more fulfilling roles in the workplace? You know, this is the topic of the age, right? You know, how can we make roles that are more dynamic in this changing landscape? And so, how can if somebody understands Ikigai, how can it be used to craft more fulfilling roles?
First, gonna say I love this question. Um, I love this question for a couple of reasons, but one of them is the fact that we're talking about job crafting, which is or crafting, this construct of crafting. My bottom line answer would be the fact to understand Ikigai allows companies, leaders, individuals to turn theories into a reality. That would be the bottom line answer. Now, in practical terms, I think it's great to know the Ikigai, but it's not enough. Yeah. So as oftentimes I would say, people say, "Oh, Dr. Passion, so you did research on passion, for example. Is that enough?" Well, it's not. It needs to be linked to purpose, for example. So I would say the following. I think a preliminary step I would suggest any organization leaders to start with is to be clear about their own Ikigai, but also then maybe their team's Ikigai. So that would be the first step. The concept of crafting comes after this almost as a follow-up. Once you're clear about that Ikigai, like a guiding star, as I said earlier, then you follow up the fact that your teams and yourself as a leader, you found your Ikigai with job crafting. Job crafting sounds easy and super interesting as a concept, but it's quite complex to put in place. So job crafting, just in a nutshell for whoever is listening, is this idea of bottom line of from an employee standpoint to have that proactive, autonomous freedom to craft, in other words, to shape your day-to-day work, your day-to-day task the way you want it to be, right? And job crafting as a follow-up to the Ikigai, I think we should look at maybe one thing I could propose is 3 levels of job crafting. So the first one would be task crafting. The second one would be something we call relationship crafting. And the third one is cognitive crafting. So task crafting, to not get confused with task design, sounds the same, but it's different. Hear me out. Task crafting is giving the freedom, the autonomy for employees to come up with their proactive ideas of how they could reimagine their work day to day in a way that would motivate them. As opposed to task design, which is usually top-bottom, implemented by a leader or manager. This is the way you're going to work. A, B, C, D, E, 5, 6, 7 tasks, and that's it. My way or the highway. Well, that's not exactly crafting, right? So task crafting is very interesting. Proactive, autonomous decision by the employee on his or her own task. Second one is relationship crafting. The way you want to work and interact with your employees, especially post-COVID. Think about it. Once upon a time, we used to be able to go to the office, knock at the door of your colleague or open space, just walk to your colleague and grab, "Hey, you know what, Mary Elizabeth, should we go for a coffee? Let's do it." Now you can't do this. So how do you interact? How do you craft your relationship with your colleagues when everything's on, I don't know, virtual, to name a few potential virtual platforms like Zoom? Well, you need to reinvent and reimagine the way you craft your relationship at work, relationships. And you need to allow and craft an environment, create an environment as a leader to allow your employees to craft the way they want to reimagine the relationships. For example, introducing water coolers, maybe giving them some free time, like half an hour every day, to have an electronic virtual water cooler, or give them a budget to see each other if they are in the same city or country once every quarter to see each other, and so on and so forth. The third level of job crafting is what we call cognitive crafting. This one is complex. It's about allowing employees to think about the sort of mindset they should have. So I think in a nutshell, my answer is understanding Ikigai as a concept is awesome, but maybe it's not enough to take that to the next level if you want to talk about crafting, job crafting. So Ikigai is a preliminary step that gives you this clarity around the sort of work and life worth living. Cool. But once you've got that, what the hell do you do? The next step is, as a leader, if you're a leader, for example, you want to give this ability for your employees and your team to job craft. And I just talked about 3 ways of doing job crafting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose the reason for the question was because I personally, as practitioner under the sun, can't imagine Ikigai and visiting Ikigai as a concept, learning about it, and it not sort of affecting the way, once it's defined, the way that jobs look if a company really chooses to adopt a new and stronger vision, right? So I think that's where the question sort of came from. But I think you sort of touched on the sort of your 3 layers of how that trickles down once that happens. But I think you're right. It's definitely not enough. It's sort of a byproduct of, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely, and I think. We'll talk about this maybe at some point, but I think something that's very hard is to turn that theory into reality. And I think something I would say is the following. Ikigai is great as an abstract concept, but if you want to turn that into practical steps or practical reality, it does require someone to understand what Ikigai means, the research behind it, but also some practical interventions or exercises that adjusted in a certain way can actually be applicable to an organization or to somebody's personal life as well. So it requires to have someone that helps you, that understands the concept of Ikigai in a practical way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's hard because you're taking something so abstract and understanding the nuances. I completely agree, especially as somebody who knows about the topic myself. What challenges might someone face organizationally when initially adopting their new Ikigai concept? As a framework for the company culture, or I have here describing aspects of it that are part of its core values. Like, what challenges might somebody face, and how can an expert help to ease that transition of the application?
It's a good question. I would say I'm going to come back to the last point I mentioned previously. I think one of the first challenge organizational leaders would face is to find either the internal or external help from someone or a team that actually understand Ikigai inside out. Not from after reading a book and that's it, I understand Ikigai, but understanding the principle behind it, the research behind it, and some of the tools that are applicable. So finding the resource or someone that knows this concept and can apply it, that is one challenge. Second, I would say, especially in department around learning and development, L&D, organizational behavior, or even HR sometimes, I personally would say the following, and I don't want to kind of shock some of our listeners, but I do observe a lot of freestyle. So people, it's normal.
Absolutely.
You don't know a concept. You read something from a Harvard Business Review articles, or you heard that something on the BBC, or you've seen a TED Talks, but then hang on, let me try this on. It's like a child in a candy store, so they try a little bit of that, of that, of that. But it needs to link to an overall strategy, that the top leadership needs to abide by and believe in. If the top leadership of the organization believe in Ikigai as a concept, as a guiding star, then the second challenge is to find a way that is not freestyle, but a way that is, again, systematic as an approach for any organization to implement Ikigai. And I think this is hard because it requires someone to know, okay, systematic what? Steps, framework, measurement tools, what are we talking about? So having something that is process systematic, it's not easy. A lot of companies try and error and readjust, and finding something systematic is tough. The third one is super mega hard, but it's doable. It's linked to this concept that you mentioned earlier in your question, culture. If you implement Ikigai as a philosophy, a stance, a way of looking at life and work, a work worth having, a job, not a job, but a work that you're passionate about, that is meaningful to you, then it probably, chances are, it will affect the culture and it will trigger some form of change. Absolutely. And we know that any form of change triggers resistance. Especially employees that are expert, have been there for like 15 years or 10 years. They go, oh, hang on, I've been doing this for 10 years. What the hell? Are you coming here with something that you come up with, you've read an article and now you're trying to implement, how do you call that, Ikigai? Okay, no, I refuse. Then it will trigger resistance. So then we enter the territory of what we call change management. So then there are quite a few models and framework. One of them is, for example, Kurt Lewin's change model, where you unfreeze, where you have to first unfreeze. So you kind of not unlearning. You want to first spot the need to change something, because you don't change for the sake of changing. You change, and you don't change everything. You change certain areas of the organization, right? Maybe the way people work, maybe the way people communicate. So you kind of unfreeze. There's certain things that, like, think of a cube. There's like a shape of a strawberry in a cube, but that strawberry is toxic or it doesn't work properly. So you want to unfreeze that cube, access the strawberry, and then you want to, like the Play-Doh, imagine it's a Play-Doh strawberry. Then you model it, which is phase 2. Phase 2 is then you implement the change. You have access, you unfreeze it, then phase 2, you take the Play-Doh, then you shape it the way it should have. It should be. That's change, yeah? And then once it's nice, then you refreeze the whole thing, because it's now, the strawberry has a shape it should have, the organization was working, and the change program is bearing its fruit. Then you refreeze the whole thing because it's working. That is complex, because this is what we call change management.
Absolutely, and I think there can sort of be a trivialization of concepts like Ikigai that can be sort of seen as sort of like self-help-ish, and then companies sort of, one manager reads a book or one leader reads a book, and then all of a sudden we want to try this on. And I think it's very important that you address sort of like the trivialization of concepts like Ikigai, and how completely organizational, like how organization transformation can really occur as a result of implementing this top down in a very methodical and with an expert approach. It can be, completely different from just trying it on like a new tool or something. Because I think I want to make sure that I differentiate that Ikigai is not really a tool, right? It's not.
It is a philosophy, a stance of life. And actually, I mean, I have my own definition if you're interested about Ikigai. And it's not like a research-based definition, but like simplistically, the way it's quite abstract the first time I read it. And this is why I scratched my head. And after reading and investigating and coaching people and doing work on Ikigai, the way I look at Ikigai, it's a life view. The way I define it is, Ikigai is a pragmatic view on life, a life that is lived with purpose and passion. So it's a pragmatic stance or a pragmatic view that one has on life, living with purpose and passion. So it's more a view, it's more a stance. Some people would call it a philosophy, I think, even in Japan.
Oh, absolutely. It is. It's a way of life, yeah. A reason for being, yeah. That was one of my questions that I was going to ask later on, but, Ikigai is such an abstract concept. Could you just take a moment to, in your own words, define and describe Ikigai for us a little further? Or do you feel like you already gave us everything that, at the basic sense, it means, or you can define it as?
Yeah, I think the word view is important. I think I'm going to use that, I probably have used that word 2 or 3 times, pragmatic. So I would say it's a pragmatic view on life, or about life, but the life lived with purpose and passion. So I think, and then if you start unpacking what purpose means and what passion means in itself, it's even more complex. But I think the bottom line is a pragmatic view on a life lived with purpose and passion would be my definition on Ikigai.
Now, this is a really loaded question that sort of is, in the same realm. So bear with me. On an individual level, there's a lot of research that applying principles of Ikigai into your life can help create greater well-being. That's undoubtedly so. You can go on Google Scholar and hundreds of articles will come up about Ikigai and all the different ways that they're, looking into this concept and this philosophy. You, Dr. Passion, work with often mission and purpose-driven individuals. What could individuals wanting to work with you gain as it relates to the Ikigai lens of well-being by engaging in a coaching relationship with you?
First of all, I would say coaching or organizational development. It really goes beyond this about human capital and people potential, really. And I would say probably threefold. The first one, ultimately, and hopefully that would resonate with people. If I was to coach like a one-on-one individual as opposed to a team, for example, I think it would allow people to change their life for the better. That's the first thing. So change life for the better. From a work perspective, but also in life in general. Living a life that is really meaningful, that they want to wake up in the morning and feel motivated about, passionate about. So the second thing I would say is probably at a team level, organizational team, it would help boost the efficiency and build what we call high-performing teams as well. So inviting teams to be focused on what is meaningful and important that would yield results by applying aspect of Ikigai or a systematic way of applying Ikigai. And I think the third thing is, part of my also doctoral research in the past was really looking at leaders and their passion. And I think if you tap at the top of the organization, leaders, public organization, private organizations, startups, and so on and so forth, you'd see a ricochet, a ripple effect across the entire organization. So ultimately, I think it also would create better leaders who themselves would have the power to create a better world. And that's secretly my hope. By applying this concept of Ikigai and helping people unpack and crack their Ikigai, they can create a better world somehow. It might sound very idealistic, but I'm really hoping that people who live a meaningful life and doing something that might be good for the world as well might help the world in itself. So creating better leaders might help creating a better world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is very central to sort of the purpose of Dr. Passion and why we want to ignite that sort of flame in people, that passion. Let's talk a little bit about my final question for you. Why is Ikigai an important concept at Dr. Passion? And how is it used in your services? I guess, why are we really talking about Ikigai here? Like, why is this even important at Dr. Passion? And talk to me a little bit about how it's used in your services.
I think we talk about that because it works. I think we talk about that because it works. I've been working with people on the Ikigai from Tokyo to New York. From Tokyo to New York to London to Paris to. But there's one thing I'm going to have to say. It's a bit like when you talk about love. Like when people take the flight when I took the flight for the first time. There's a reason I'm talking about this. I was shocked. I was a teenager. For the flight attendant to say, in case of emergency, oxygen mask would fall on yourself, and first put it on yourself, and then put it on people like elderly people or kids. I found that so selfish. I thought, whoa, gosh, hang on. If I have a little child or someone super old next to me, I would probably want to save them. It took me years to realize one thing. How can you save somebody else if you can't first save yourself? How can you love somebody if you can't love yourself? And one thing that I want to say is I personally experienced Ikigai with my own coach, talked about this with my mentors. And when I found Ikigai and I experienced the power of Ikigai in myself, I was telling myself, you know what? It works. It works. I'm doing something I'm passionate about. I don't even call it work. It's something I wake up in the morning. I freaking love what I do. And I freaking love the fact that I'm helping people build a better world and living a more successful life and, purposeful life as well. And then I wanted to offer that to other people. So then I came up with a systematic approach and did more research. And so then I did that with other people and it works as well. So it works. That's what I would say.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and also for answering some of these really crucial questions as a follow-up to sort of the theme at Dr. Passion this month. Thank you so much for everything you've shared, and I hope you all watching have enjoyed us talking about this.
Thanks so much, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
talk to you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the chat. If you did, share, like, subscribe. And please join me for the next one.